Welcome to another episode of Bourbon and Rum. This is a podcast of two brothers from opposite ends of the spectrum. My name's Kent. I'm a rum drinker, and I'm from the left side of the aisle.
And I'm Kyle. I like bourbon, tend to be a little more conservative. Join us as we explore this experiment. Can two brothers from different sides of the political spectrum have a civil conversation and celebrate our differences?
What are you drinking?
I am drinking a Heaven Hill grain to glass. Heaven Hill is a distillery down in Bardstown, and they have been kind of experimenting with these different grains. And this is one, it's a high rye bourbon, really tasty. I had gotten I was at the liquor store yesterday, and they had Old Fitzgerald again, the 7-year that is starting to be more accessible. And here are some friends, and so we broke that out, and then he broke out this grain to glass. But I don't normally like the high rye as much, but this is really a full body, nice mouthfeel, nice rich flavor. So what are you drinking, Kent?
I think I said last week I've been in other places that have bigger liquor stores, so I got a couple interesting bottles. This is a Santa Teresa 1796 triple-aged Solera rum, and it is hecho in Venezuela, so made in Venezuela, Spanish style. That's our clue right there, that it's from a Spanish-speaking country. Our listeners can't see this, but you can see this on the kind of a cool-looking bottle, and it's got a wax dip like a maker's mark.
Oh, fancy.
And the Solera, I've mentioned this before, but Solera aging, it comes from Spain and from the way they do sherry. And it's the thing where you stack up, I got 10 barrels at different ages. I made a barrel every year and I stacked them up for 10 years. And then whatever I draw out of the bottom barrel, I backfill with the one next to it all the way up. And so after just a little bit, that bottom barrel becomes, there is stuff in there that's older than dirt, but everything that's in there is kind of perfectly blended with all of the other barrels, kind of mixing it out.
Yeah, interesting. When they say triple age, do you think they put it in a barrel, age it, and then pull it out, put it in another barrel, and age it in another barrel? Is that the kind of the approach?
Yeah. So it actually talks about that on the back of the can. And let me read this. Santa Teresa 1796 goes through 3 aging stages to achieve its unique, smooth, and balanced taste. Traditional aging, 3 different rums with complex flavors and aromas are aged separately and later carefully bottled by our maestro Roneros. Then it goes to Solera cask aging. This blend, the blend of the 3 rums, is then aged through our Solera casks, which consist of 4 rows of hogshead barrels that transfer only half of each barrel in a waterfall effect from top to bottom, acquiring a superior refinement. The first Solera in this thing was created in 1992, so 33 years ago. So there's 33-year-old rum in what I'm drinking, but probably a very minor amount. And then lastly, the third aging is a Solera vat aging. Lastly, it is aged a third time in the Solera vats, large vats made of French Limousin oak, which are never completely emptied to achieve its final smoothness and balance.
That's wild.
So here's a glass. Cheers to you. I'm going to drink a quarter of a teaspoon of 30-year-old rum.
Yeah.
And it is really glassy, like unbelievably smooth. It's a little sweet. They may use a little bit of sugar after the fact to level it out, but there's no burn at all, nothing. It's pretty light. It's an 80 proof, so it's
Yeah.
not very hot to begin with, but just really nice.
You think the founders of that will be upset when you mix it with Diet Coke?
Yeah.
I actually have been listening to some of our podcasts. I don't normally listen to our podcasts. I don't. Do you listen to them after the fact?
No, it's a little hard for me, honestly, especially like I can listen to the back catalog, but like the one we just did, it's all cringy for me. So no, I can't very well listen.
Yeah, I don't normally. And we drove down here to see some friends, and so I listened to a couple. And the thing is, especially when I listen to the recent ones, I'm like, well, why didn't I say this? Or no, next time I'm going to say this. So formulating better arguments, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. And then I
Yeah.
noticed, and then several times I said things. I'm like, I'm trying to make a point, and I said something that didn't make any sense. It's just kind of funny how to think through that.
Yeah, honestly, kind of well, we've been talking a little bit about it. We had the giveaway, and congratulations to Tom for winning our contest. We're grateful for his being a listener. It has been sort of introspective looking back on a year of this. It's a different world than it was a year ago. It's been a challenging year for me, obviously, under the circumstances. But maybe ironically, having this regular conversation with you has been grounding for me. It doesn't make me less outraged by some of the things that I see, but it has done a lot for me to talk to you with a different perspective. And yeah, it really does kind of prove the thesis that we started with this in my mind, because we've not changed our positions very much, but the exercise of being civil and humane to somebody and talking about big issues, that's part of our whole problem, is that we live in these echo chambers, right? If you don't talk to anybody who
Yeah.
doesn't agree with you, well, it's pretty easy to slide, and and then it's like everything just looks horrible. Well, anyway, it's just thank you, because you haven't really changed my mind, but you've kept me sane.
Yeah, and ditto to you. And I don't want to toot our own horn here, but I think the fact that we've had a year of civil dialogue in the present times that we're in is really impressive, because by any measure, we're at a time of maybe the most polarization that people have seen in recent years. And, the current administration and the detractors and all the back and forth, the fact that we've been able to do a year of this civilly now, to me, is even more special.
Yeah, agreed.
Did you listen to the voice memo I sent you earlier?
No, I did not. I'm sorry.
I guess where I was thinking about is, recently I think we found common ground in some areas, and we found that encouraging. Although it took Jeffrey Epstein to get us common ground, so there's that. And I think we've also both thought, hey, our respective parties have disappointed us at various times. Our candidates have disappointed us. And the other thing we've talked about is how we both view, we often agree on the outcomes. We just differ on how to get there. And then I guess the fourth piece of this, I would say, is you've talked about running for office. I don't think you're serious, and it's not something you want to do, but I have said, and I'll say it again for the record, that if you ran as a liberal Democrat, I'd be your number one campaigner, even though I probably would disagree with half the stuff you were saying. But I got to thinking about what would be fun is for us to put together I'll call it the Bourbon and Rum Project 2030 or something like that. There's the Project 2025, the right wing, view of the world. What would be fascinating to me is if we developed a platform, and I don't know what this looks like. I don't know if this is a written thing or maybe this is just conjecture, but could we develop a platform of positions where we come at those positions from wildly different places, but could you come up with could you put two people in a room and say, look, you both want to reduce the murder rate. You got to come up with a solution you both agree to. And what does that dialogue look like? Because if all we're doing is taking our own positions and we just go to our corner and say, well, I think we ought to do this, you think we ought to do that, there's a bit of a cop out. But if
Yeah.
we actually had to solve for something that was going to be on this, you call it a unity platform, I don't know what you call it, does that change the nature of the dialogue?
I think it's a brilliant idea, and it changes it a lot, in my opinion. And the risk is that the risk is that it could go. It's kind of like least common denominator, right? Like we got to start with the
Yeah.
common ground, and so the one that you raised, how do we reduce the murder rate? Like, okay, we're going to start by saying that murder is not optimal. And like we can both like yeah, and like probably don't have to get too many steps past that before we start to work. What we would have to do, I think, is to resist the temptation to do one of two things. And that's either come up with a solution that is so benign and meaningless that you can't disagree with it, right? Like that
Yeah.
would be the risk of that. Uh, and so, is there a way we could put like a reality, like a codicil that not only do we have to agree, and it has to be fill in the blank. It has to be something that would go afoul of both of the party official platforms, although we don't really do platforms in the way they used to back in the day at conventions. But you know what I mean? Like we we would have to get something that I want something that Fox News would be like eye rolling, and I want you to. I mean, I want you to come up with something that Fox News would be like, I don't know where is he coming from, and mine would have to be Joe Scarborough would have to say, you know, this guy's an authoritarian. Like how do we
Well, it's kind of they say like the results of a perfect negotiation are when all parties are pissed. Like,
yeah. Yeah, I think it would be interesting. And the other thing about it that I will hypothesize is when I think about what are the big issues of today, I mean, you mentioned crime. I think immigration policy would be a perfect one that's apparently a hotbed and a flashpoint for people. I already bet that you and I would come to a much more conciliatory position on immigration. And I think if you go down the list, this is what I think is really ironic. If you go down the list, item by item, I think we could effectively do this. We're not going to agree on everything, but I think we could come up with position statements or policy recommendations that neither of us is completely comfortable with, but we can see the upside to it. The problem is when you put them all together, and that's part of the strategy of the political class keeping us plebeians down in our place is that you don't get to cafeteria your way through like in a very polarized world. You know, it used to be that you'd have people that like, well, I'm a Republican, but I really disagree on this point, or like the tribalism now makes you like you got to pick sides, and then you
right.
got to check, and then you got to check the commentary before you say anything about it, so you don't look like you're crossing. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so the individual issues take a backseat to the overall brand. And in some ways, that's the most broken piece.
Well, and the thing that's interesting most to me is could we craft solutions that are I think we could. I think if you take people from different sides of the aisle that can have a civil dialogue, I think you could actually produce a solution that's way more effective because otherwise to your point today what wins is either complete swill like, we want all the children of the world to live in perfect peace and harmony or it's one side got more votes than the other guy, and they're going to force through some really radical position, but it's probably not that good long term.
Well, and I'm on this kind of throw all the bums out role lately, but again, I think people assume that people go to Washington and take seats in Congress or the Senate or the presidency or these cabinet offices, and they think that they have an interest in solving these problems. And I think
Right.
many of them don't. I don't mean that they're all soulless or have no hope, but I don't know. Like, what
Well,
if you,
if you solved all the problems, why the hell would we need you there anymore? Then you could go home,
right?
and they want to
Exactly.
have a 30-year career.
Exactly. So
Okay,
I
so
don't think that,
let's jump into one that's current: the mass shootings and gun
yeah, that's a
control
good
and all
one.
the dialogue right now. You know,
Yeah, I would say it's a good one. It's a horrible one. And, the most recent one in Minneapolis is, took place, what, 10 miles from where my grandson lives. That's kind of
nuts.
hard to look down the barrel of that. Well, I am a Democrat, and I'm going to state my table stakes on this coming in. I'm also a gun owner, and I haven't done a lot of shooting lately, but I like to shoot, like to target shoot. I've hunted birds. I would be uncomfortable with kind of a seize them all mentality, but wow, the inability to even have dialogue about gun legislation is I think is a real problem.
It just seems like a such a broken record when these things come. It's like, well, we need an assault weapons ban, we need this ban, we need that ban. It's funny because you're the guy, you're the left, the person on the left, and you're a gun owner. I'm on the right. I don't own a gun. I'm not that. I'm not that. I'm not a gun guy. I mean, I
Yeah.
get the Second Amendment, and I support the Second Amendment. I'm glad that my neighbors have guns because the state of Texas, you can shoot somebody for walking into your house uninvited. So I'm kind of glad that people know that and
Does
respect
that happen
that.
in your
But
neighborhood a lot? You got a lot of that walking in uninvited thing going on
I don't.
in your
Yeah,
neighborhood?
I don't think so. I'm not too worried about it. So yeah, we're not too paranoid about it. So I'm not coming at it from a gun thing. I guess I'm coming. When I see these proclamations, I come to it more from a pragmatic thing. It's like, most of the people committing gun crime, it doesn't matter if there's another law or not. I mean, they're obviously killing someone, so they're showing a propensity to break laws. So the fact that you have a law, like, you know, I guess where
Yeah.
I'm going, like okay, if you got rid of the guns, like if the law got it off the street, that's a different story. But a law to be a law, I think, is just pointless.
I hear you on that. One of the things so my hypothesis on that is that the biggest barrier to come up with real solutions is that it's the freaking third rail. And I thought it was going to get a little bit better when the NRA sort of self-immolated a couple of years ago, because they hold over politicians like this sword of Damocles. And and what that means is nobody actually talks about it. So, right, you could pass a law that all guns are henceforth and heretofore completely illegal. You can't have them anymore. There'll be collection points that we expect you to bring them to. Right? Like you could pass whatever law you do, and it's not going to fix that. However, crime and shooting is not a single thing or a monolith that doesn't have different flavors. We talked a little bit about Chicago the other day and about the murder rate. And there are certainly innocent people that are killed in Chicago, but I'd be willing to bet that disproportionately high number of the victims of crime in Chicago may have been committing crimes in the process of getting killed. And that's one kind of crime and that's one kind of situation. These school shootings or these group shootings, there might be more of an opportunity to make a difference than we think. This most recent one, I haven't read a ton about it, but the guns were apparently purchased legally and they were purchased legally recently. And so, yeah, there's no law that you're going to take it's going to get every revolver off of the street. But what about selling guns to 20-year-olds that are in active distress? And what about background checks? What about the ability of parents or others to say, look, my kid's got problems. They need to be on the no gun fly list, right? You can't do that now because talking about gun control is so much the third rail. I'm not talking about taking somebody's hunting rifle away. I'm saying, though, a depressed, angry, angst filled, hate filled 20-year-old who's very likely got mental illness or challenges. To my knowledge, there's no formal national mechanism that a parent, a teacher, or somebody can say, hey, we need to think twice about that person being able to buy a gun. That's
Yeah,
something that I
well,
would put on the list. Could you live with something like that?
sure. But I think you're going to run into another constituency of an angst-filled, confused, transitioning 20-year-old, and that I don't necessarily want to go down that path, but like the whole thing that individual was dealing with, some would call like hate speech to say that they're confused and troubled by their situation because they're, gender fluid and all this issues
Yeah,
that they're dealing with. And so there becomes like, I mean, that's kind of one of the problems with and I'm not saying I'm up for a solution. I'm just saying like you start going down that rabbit hole. Like, well, I think you're mentally unstable, so I'm not going to give you a gun. Well, how do you define that? And how do you define that without then get butting up against some constituency that, oh, you're discriminating against this person because they're having, whatever viewpoints they're having, or you know what I mean? So it's like, I'm
well,
with
you
you.
could,
I think that's
yeah,
legitimate, but like, how could you objectively
yeah,
determine that? And then, because you're going to have a whole group of people that are going to be like, oh, you're calling this person mentally unstable and they're not, you know what I mean? Like,
sure.
that's a
Well,
can of worms, it seems like.
it is, although, it's not like we haven't dealt with this before. There are rules around involuntary confinement for mental illness, right? I can't just call wherever you're on vacation. I can't just call 911 and say, I was talking to my brother. I think he's nuts. I think you ought to lock him up. There's a standard of what comprises that. It's defined in law. If your wife and I and your kids all got together and called the cops and said he's crazy and they need to lock him up, they might, but even then, you've got recourse. There's some due process that goes with that. And in this case, I'd err on the side of caution because what's the worst thing that happens? A person isn't under duress and they didn't get to buy a gun. I don't think that's the end of the world. So I think you're right. I think that's a complication, but I don't think it's necessarily a deal breaker. Yeah, so that would be one platform thing, and admittedly, not necessarily simple to enforce, but I would like us to be able to have a dialogue about how do you create a fair way for people to flag people that shouldn't have guns. And
But
on
like
the
this, person in Minneapolis, they didn't have any formal treatment for mental illness. I mean, obviously they looking retroactively, it sounds like this person was distressed, but like, okay, without any some kind of objective treatment, how do you call somebody out as being, well, you're obviously a whack job. You shouldn't have, like, how do you do
right,
that?
well, it wouldn't be foolproof, but Kyle, I think that's one of the really important things about having an exercise like this. We we can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, and this happens all the time with guns. And I'm not trying to pick at you, but you started down this path. Like, well, yeah, if you could get rid of all the guns, but you can't, they're still going to have guns. And so the people that you want to legislate against are still going to have the guns. There's truth to that statement. The problem is that that doesn't mean that there's nothing we can do or there's no way we can influence. So, to your point, yes, coming up with an objective measurement of someone shouldn't have a gun, challenging someone's mental status, that's all kinds of problematic. And in this case, might not have caught it. You're right. But how many of these shootings have we seen where everybody's like, well, yeah, he wore a black trench coat and wouldn't talk to anybody? Like in some cases, yeah, it would slip by, but there's some cases where it's pretty obvious to people. And
Well, I don't.
like,
I guess my thing is I don't. I think the path you're going down is the right path, and I'd love to explore that more. But I don't feel like the people on the left that every school shooting, oh, we need more gun control. Like people aren't necessarily having a thoughtful dialogue. Okay, how do we really fix this? It's just like, oh, we need to ban assault weapons. Oh, okay, yeah. The crack the crack house, like they're going to give a crap about a bill, like a law, and
well,
I guess my thing is it's like I'm all for exploring real solutions, but when somebody just knee jerks this, oh well, we need another law. Well, okay, let's talk about what you're going to achieve.
look, I don't disagree with you. I think it's a valid criticism, but I will tell you exactly where the impetus for Jen Psaki's position comes from, because it fits the pattern every time. Because Republican, look, you're right.
Yeah,
A
but my case
Nobody
my
does
case is
anything.
that
Like, oh, we can't fix it, so I'm not going to do anything, and we're not even going to talk about it. We're not even going to ask ourselves, is there any legislative remedy that we could make any kind of difference with?
but I don't feel like there's ever a really concerted effort on either side to really have a dialogue about how to fix it. It's all sound bites back and forth. And
Yeah.
I agree with where you're going. I guess I'm just saying that's to me, like to your point, the Democrats don't want this to be fixed any more than the Republicans don't want it. It's a useful, you know, volley back and forth. Like, oh no, we Republicans all love guns, and no, we need gun. No, how about we figure out how to make some type of real change to this? And that's where I'm going with our little platform here. Like, I like where you're going. Maybe how could we make that? Or, is there something else? Is there some angle that because of the polarization and all the rehearsed talking points, nobody ever delves into?
Well, I'll throw another one out there. It's kind of cut from the same cloth. And actually, I have seen a little bit more of this lately. What about if you're a parent or you're a counselor or you're someone in a position to know and you have real credible indications that someone has violent ideation and you don't do something about it, you go to jail. And that happened in Michigan with the one family, I won't remember the details, but there was a shooting. And later they found out that the parents knew the kid was not right. And they were like, well, whatever, don't pay any attention. And they were both tried. I don't know what the exact resolution with that was. That could be problematic, of course. And I don't want to be reckless with that. But
But I guess where I'm going with this problem is like mental illness. It's logical with AI, for instance, that maybe you could assess somebody. Hell, I don't know. Maybe at some point in the future they can look at your eye movements and know if you're a psychopath or not. There may be shit
right.
that could figure this out that we don't even know about, and I'm all for that. But the problem is, and I think where the frustration is when the gun control conversation comes up, is it's like I love that. Like, hey, put a law in place that says if you got to pass these parameters to be able to access a weapon. Well, these people, if you're hell bent to go shoot up a school and you're not authorized to get a gun, you could still get a gun. And it happens day in and day out, whether it's on the illegal market, whether it's, hey, I grabbed one from my neighbor or my dad. I guess where I'm going is like, how do you swim upstream even further and solve this problem? Because, yeah, I mean, I'm for having that conversation, sure, about, could you eliminate getting to mentally ill folks? But if you're hell bent to shoot up a school, that's probably still not going to stop you. So what would stop you? Now, you could get rid of every gun to where there's no more guns, but again, is that logical? So what is a solution? And I'm not against gun control. I guess I'm just saying I don't think that's solving the problem.
But That makes sense, but I don't want to turn loose of this, and I'm not going to let you off that easy because you fall back into the same thing. With all respect, this is exactly the thing that underlies the Republican response. It's like, well, if they really want a gun, they're going to get a gun. Let me suggest a couple things to you, though. Is there a way that you could legislate something that would 100% stop it? No, of course not. You're right on that. But it's a gigantic leap in logic to think that we can't do anything about it. And so let me ask you this. If we came up with a system that impeded things a little
But
bit,
what I'm saying,
what if it stopped 10% of the shootings? Is that not worth doing?
I guess I'm saying what I'm advocating for is I don't care what any of the Republicans say. I'm just saying like that's not solving the root problem. How and maybe you can't solve the root problem. And maybe to your point, maybe 10% shaved off 10% through a law like this. Okay. No argument. I guess I'm just saying like how could you really address this to where it comes back to how do you protect people? Because I just I'm not opposed to what you're saying. I just feel like we're having the wrong argument all the time. We're all arguing about gun control, and it's like, again, if you're a criminal, you're probably not going to obey laws. So how do we protect our populace from criminals who have no regard for any law? And if they're hell bent to hurt people, they're going to hurt people. So how do you protect people? I guess that's where I'm trying to go.
Well, and that may be one where I wave the flag and say that we can't do it. I actually don't think that. I do think that there are things that we could do. I do think that a better system for dealing with mental health in this country, it's not going to fix all of them, but it might fix some. And I think you could put other things on the list. I think mental health is part of it. I think that isolation, so there's a lot of social fabric problems that lead to this. But then you face the same problem that I think you're facing with your thing. Like, well, no, there is no silver bullet that's going to fix all of this. But can we mitigate? Can we reduce that harm? And in my mind, that happens all through the stack, right? There's mitigating harm by not cutting funds for mental health, spending money to fix mental health, making a concerted effort to do something about it. I think that you can't legislate this, but people spend too much time alone, and they're not connected to other people.
They say that loneliness is worse for your health than smoking.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. But again, you got to realize that there is no silver. That's the wrong metaphor for this one. There is no magic wand solution that's going to fix the problem. And that is why we need to talk about gun control in this context. It's not the only thing. It's preposterous. And I don't know of any serious person who thinks that you can legislate your way out of it. At the same time, let's also not kid ourselves. When the Brady bill came in and we did have an assault weapons ban for 10 or 15 years, it made a measurable, statistically viable difference. So it's not, did it stop all shootings? No. But it's preposterous to say, well, they're still going to get guns. So we're not even going to make a surface cosmetic attempt to act like we're going to remove the ban on assault weapons, and we're going to say free for all, do whatever you want, because we can't take everybody's guns away. Like, that's just nonsense. And you wouldn't let us off the hook if I said, well, we're gonna do some mental health fixing. Well, no, that's not going to fix it all either. But it doesn't mean we shouldn't try.
Yeah, it's all good. But I'd love to dig into it more. Like, what is it? Why is it that these things happen? Is it the access to guns? Is it, there's mass murders that happen elsewhere. Guns obviously enable it at a much faster scale. If you're attacking people with a knife, you're not going to get as far as if you're attacking with a gun.
I think that How does this problem happen? This problem happens that we have pervasive problems of mental health that are worse now than they've been before. They happen in a context where people, look, I'm not being just Mr. Churchy, but people they don't interact with other people at church. They shop online rather than at the mall, right? So we've got people that have increasing rates of mental illness in an isolated world where they're not relating to other people, where mass shooters, even though the media claims to try to downplay it, there's still, it's kind of a heroic. I, I
I
mean,
tell you one law that I think they ought to put into place is whoever a mass shooter is, it ought to their identity ought to be completely sealed, and you're unable to come up with a way to where there is zero fame. Like in the NFL, if you drop your drawers and run across the field, they won't show you on the video.
right.
They won't show anybody that disrupts or anything. And it's like, it seems like you said, some of these people want to go down in history infamous. I mean, if you knew that, hey, your body's going to get buried, nobody's ever going to hear from who the hell you were, makes a difference.
Right. We're going to expunge you from the record like you never existed. Yeah. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is you're asking a question holistically, how can we look at fixing the problem? And I'm saying this problem is an amplifying stack of these multiple issues. And so I don't think that there's one solution. I think you got to do it all. I think our mental health treatment in this country is a it is a it is a colossal embarrassment, the way that we deal with mental illness in this country.
In what way?
Did you know, and this is a government thing. This is a government problem. So, do you know, this is I'm on a different tangent here, but the thing that drives what hospitals charge for what or for doctors and hospitals charge is what Medicare chooses to reimburse. That is
Yeah.
that is the foundation of the whole system. And Medicare will pay an order of magnitude more money for you to get a knee replacement for your arthritis than to give you maintenance medication for your schizophrenia. And so that has all kinds of consequences. For one, the I shouldn't say the best doctors are going to be orthopedic surgeons, but the ones that have the capability, right? Like the difference in compensation between psychiatry and orthopedic surgery or some of these other specialties, it tells you a little bit about what we value in our society, right? Wouldn't we make wouldn't psychiatric drugs be more expensive than erectile dysfunction drugs?
Yeah.
Like, so we don't have our values straight when it comes to mental health. That said, if you've got people that are suffering from mental health crises, we've cultivated a society, like I said, where you do everything alone and in your basement. Well, that's not good for people that have those
Well, but
challenges.
I think we've also, and this is kind of where I was going with this Minneapolis shooter. There's also this trend, and you call it woke or whatever causes it, that doesn't want to stigmatize somebody by saying you have a problem. And so you want social acceptance of everybody's situation. And it's like, okay, I don't want to be cruel to people, but if somebody has a legitimate mental illness, it ought to be addressed as though it's a problem to be solved. But if you're in a worldview where, hey, I don't criticize my affliction here, and you can't call out my affliction as being negative or bad. You know what I mean? There is an element of that here where it's like nobody wants to be able to call out anybody for anything, and it's like, but how do we take care of each other? How do we take care of somebody who legitimately has an issue? There's a difference between being cruel to somebody and helping somebody, right?
Yeah, I guess you're right. I don't disagree with you on that. I guess I would say this is the fact that this person was trans. I wouldn't jump to that conclusion being as much of a factor, I think, as you think it is. It's not like I don't know. I don't know if I want how I want to go there. I do want to say this. So maybe I'm going to take a step back from. I don't think it's bad terminology. I don't think it's a binary choice. And what I mean is this: there, the choice that we have in life is not I accept and embrace everything that you say, whether it makes any sense with my faith tradition, my beliefs, my personal values. Like none of that matters. Whatever you feel, think, want, or be, I have no stake in that. Versus people saying, well, I mean, even though the minority of people in this country, I think today, are now professing Christians, we're a Christian nation, and therefore, we're going to nail the Ten Commandments up in every classroom. There's a middle ground to that too, and I think that we've lost some of that. And that's the saying that I might not understand or even be supportive of, or if like I may have differences with the things that you choose to do and say and to behave, but I will fight to the death to protect your right to do that. And that is a middle ground that I think that we've lost, and I think that's to our shame.
Well, and I guess that's kind of where I was going with this individual. And I haven't read all the articles, I've just read some, but like, they were struggling with their gender. They were angry at their mom over, there was some statement about like, well, you didn't support me in my transition. That's why I got to go kill children. I haven't read it all in detail, but that's the impression I got from the articles I was reading. And it's kind of like, okay, if you had dialogue with this individual, you might be like, hey, this person doesn't need to have access to a weapon. And a sane, logical mind might say that, but somebody else might say, well, no, either you're discriminating against them because they're transitioning and they're struggling with just like I'm not making a value judgment of the person from that standpoint, but it's like looking retroactively at this. Obviously, the person was having mental struggles, but it wasn't something that was diagnosed. It wasn't something official. And if you'd have called him out at the time and said, you can't get a weapon because you're having these thoughts, there's probably a whole constituency on the other side that would say, well, you're discriminating against this person because of X, Y, Z. And so I'm not trying to
probably right. You're probably right on that. But
so how do you solve that?
But does that negate, again, is this typical? It happened. I'm not saying that it didn't happen.
I would bet that a lot of people that struggle, I would bet you that a lot of people that struggle mentally and emotionally don't have a record with a psychiatrist that's documented. Most of these people, that's the whole reason they're struggling. To your point, we don't treat mental health well. And you got these people that are struggling and they haven't been to anybody. If they'd been to a psychiatrist or a psychologist and they documented their time, they probably help them. But the fact that they haven't, how do you then, as a gun seller, be like, hey, you've got no record of psychiatric treatment, but you're obviously like, how would you make that determination? I'm all for it. I'm not arguing with you of the need. I'm just like, how could you implement that? If there's other than, is there some, back to this kind of AI thing, is there some test? Is there some kind of screening you can do? Because, if it's not documented, how the hell would you know?
I don't know. I'm just saying, let's not let this be a red herring. The fact that this person was trans, I don't think that I think it was a factor in this case. But that doesn't mean that we can't ever have a system where we try to do these things. Don't throw the whole baby out with the bathwater.
I'm not throwing it out. I'm legitimately, I like it. I'm just saying that.
Would some people make that sound? Would they say you're being unfair? Yeah, people would say it. But if the person was like,
I care less about being the unfair piece. That's just a piece of it. I'm more like, if it's not documented, how would you know? And if somebody is really bad off, it's probably not documented because they're probably not getting treatment. So how could you screen for these people?
We're not unfortunately, we're not without data on this stuff. So, of mass shooting, school shooting people of in the last 5 years, add up the frickin' hundreds of them that would be. Again, we have the unenviable position of having damn data on this. How many of them were like, oh, he's a charming, cute boy, and I had no idea that anything was wrong? Does that happen? Yeah, it happens, and people fly under the radar. But how many of these that you hear and they go back and they're like, oh yeah, we knew that one was crazy. Like, will people slip through the cracks? Absolutely.
But
Is it
but
foolproof? No. But does that mean we shouldn't try?
but you have. I guess I'm trying to go. I agree. What I'm trying to say though is like I just looked it up. Under the Gun Control of 1968, Gun Control Act, you can't get a weapon if you have a documented mental health record, like you've been in a mental institution, you've got mentally, there's terminology for it, like if you've been seeing somebody and you've got a mental health issue. So that law's on the books. Where I'm going is like, I would bet my paycheck that of the hundreds of people that you're talking to, most of them have never seen a mental health professional in their life. That's a whole freaking problem. And I guess where I'm going is like, I'm with you. We need a mental health system, one that engages those people. How do we do that? But then, two, like, if you're going to tell these people they can't have a weapon, I'm 100% in favor of that. But if they've never seen a mental health professional, how the hell would you know? And how could a gun seller determine that? That's all I'm asking. I'm for the law,
Yeah.
but I'm trying to understand how you do it.
Well, you don't do it 100%. It doesn't catch them all. Absolutely. But it would catch some. And
But like how? That's what I'm saying. Like how would it?
well, it would catch the ones that are treated. That's not all of them, but
But that's already in. That's already in place. That's already. But that's already a law.
But you can go to a gun show and step around the law because you pay for cash and nobody asks any questions, and we don't enforce that law.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm good for closing the gun control
On my
the gun.
I mean, do you hear anything about that? Is that something that, like Cash Patel, could he do anything about
but
that?
I think
like maybe, like enforce the frickin' law.
Yeah. I think this is the problem: is you're advocating for people to do things that aren't really going to help. And I guess I want to help.
I'm just
thinking,
saying
like,
that help is not the same as cure.
You want people to enact laws that are completely unenforceable and ineffective. I want to enact things that could help. That's the part I'm struggling with.
I know you're saying that, but you're not. You're again, and we're trying to come up with a platform that we can both sign on to. But insofar,
Hey, by the way, this project 2030 is going completely unsuccessful in this approach, but yeah. We're going to get there by like 2080, but yeah.
Well, okay, but like, how effective is the prosecution of existing law? And if it's that easy, like, why do Republican senators say, I'm sending my thoughts and prayers, and not a damned word else? Why don't they say, we passed these laws a few years ago, but we're not certain that the FBI is being very effective at policing these rules. And we're not auditing gun shops to see if they're actually doing background checks. We let these flea market gun shows go on in high school gyms where people are walking around with stacks of $100 bills. You think people are background checking there? Well, no. We don't have registration of guns. And I know, like, people's hair is on fire. Oh my God, it's the government trying to take it away. Like, it's not like we can do nothing. And yet, like, well, there's a lot of guns. People are going to get them anyways. Therefore, wash my hands of it? That's crazy.
Well, I feel like the other side is just, hey, we need more gun control laws, but have no solutions, no ideas how they're going to. Hey, we shouldn't be giving guns to mentally unhealthy people. But there's, again, like, how do you make that happen? I feel like we're ships passing in the night, all saying things that are not really helping the situation.
Well, kind of, but
I mean, federal rules
kind
still
of.
apply gun shows. By the law, gun shows, you're still supposed to do a background check
And how many arrests has Cash Patel's FBI made?
of gun show people. Yes.
Yeah. The other thing, and I need to fact check myself on this, but the assault weapons ban, we repealed. Just explain that to me. You can say, well, it didn't really fix everything and people could still get guns. Explain to me the rationale for abolishing the previous assault weapons ban that we had. Like it didn't make it better, right? It might not have fixed anything, but it did not make it better. Saying it's the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act of 1994, a 10-year ban, and we were like, nope, we don't need that anymore. We should go for this assault weapon. You make the same criticism that a lot of Republicans do when these things come up. Guns are already out there. We're not going to fix it. But do we need more guns? Like what like why did we say, no, we don't need this silly ban on it? I cannot get my head around who would say we need more guns on the street. And that's essentially what the legislature did.
Yeah. I don't really have I don't, they banned every assault weapon. I'm not against that, but I'm also curious if that has any impact.
Well,
I mean,
I heard this week, and again, I'm second handing this, that it did affect. That there was a reduction in shooting using assault weapon, and I don't know, did it fix it all? Of course not. But again, I'm going with my 10% rule. 10% fewer kids killed in school is maybe not something to be proud of, but I'd rather have my hand in making the problem 10% better than shrugging and saying, a lot of guns out there, nothing we can do.
I think that just reading about it too, I think this is interesting. It's not so much the gun show. Like if it's a registered gun show, it sounds like there's laws and things they have to follow. And there's, to your point, I don't know what the prosecution level is, but the bigger loophole isn't gun shows. It's private gun sales, like
Yes.
selling something on Craigslist. And there's really no way to, there's no, I mean, you could legislate it, but it's like, how do you prevent that? Let me ask you about school shootings, just for conjecture. It's somewhat of a unique problem in America. I mean, there's mass shootings and violence and people driving cars through crowds in other countries, so we're not completely limited there. But is there a cultural element of the United States that makes those things more prevalent?
That
It's
might
funny.
be the best question.
My wife and I were watching, and this is a really probably unrelated anecdote, but my wife and I are there's something on Netflix where it's a Japanese thing. It's like all these Japanese professional athletes of various sports, and they bring them together, and it's like a athletic elimination thing where there's multiple events, and they eliminate so many people at each thing, and it's all voiceover, English, so you can tell they're talking in Japanese, but it's all voiceover in English. And so I don't know that it's factual. They may be saying things they're not really saying, but they're all like competing against each other, and they're all very complimentary of each other and very encouraging and supporting each other. And as like we were kind of laughing, if it was a bunch of Americans, they'd all be finding ways to backstab each other and screw over the next guy. Is the individualist element of American freedom and democracy is a negative repercussion of that the individualist who thinks they can go shoot up a school? Is that an
Yes.
American thing?
Yes. And that's why this problem's so intractable, because the fact that we have all these guns is a symptom, not the cause, right? Like again, I'm holding to my party line. I think that we ought to outlaw assault weapons, and I think we ought to register firearms, and we ought to have more control. So I'll admit that. But guns aren't the one thing true that tin-eared Republicans say when there's a shooting is that guns are not the problem, it's people that's the problem. That's true. But we have a country full of people that have problems. Why in the hell would we do everything we can to make sure that guns are available on every street corner? But yeah, I think guns are a symptom of the same problem. Problem or strength, honestly, and most things are like that in life, right? Like your greatest strength is also your weakness. We are a nation of rugged individualists, of people that, our culture prizes self advancement. We put a lot more stock in individual achievement than we do in raising the tide for everybody. And I think that has ramifications. Now, I am going way out there. The reason that we don't have the social network that Norway does, and not the taxes, to because we're like, well, no, we're okay with a certain percentage of the population failing. Like we don't need to have the net high for everybody, because go make something of yourself. So it's our strength as a nation, but it also directly fuels some of the problems that we have.
Yeah. So then it becomes, is that an unavoidable negative consequence of who we are as a nation? And if we're going to live here, then I guess where I'm going down the path with this is, if the creation of these people is unavoidable, one angle is you take away their implements, take away their guns. Another angle is, how can we beef up protection of the innocent?
So, oh man, I don't want to make light, but it used to be that you would count on Republicans for not wanting to, be hemmed in with a lot of government stuff. But now we're comfortable with stationing troops on the National Mall. I'm not. I am enough of an individualist that, gosh, the thought of that horrifies me, that schools become like prison camps and that you double man trap every door to get in. And yeah, I don't know.
Give every principal a weapon. We need more guns, Kent.
Yeah, well, yeah, that might might
or
help.
You ever seen Minority Report? The movie?
Yeah. Pre-crime?
Yeah, there we go.
Well, I mean, there's our AI.
Well, I mean, honestly, how far away are we from, could you predict somebody? I mean,
you know what? I'll tell you.
I'll put it back on you. I mean, you're advocating for gun sellers to pre-screen people based on mental illness, and presumably pre-screening them based on mental illness that hasn't been documented. So your push would be to find a way to legislate that we don't sell to people who appear to have a mental health problem. So why not take that to a further extreme and come up with a systematic way to figure out if somebody's mentally unstable?
Yeah. Honestly, that doesn't sound like, I mean, framed that way, that sounds a little creepy. And this is a problem that we got to reckon with, because the Second Amendment is an amendment to the Constitution. And I believe in the Constitution. I'd like to repeal the Second Amendment or modify the Second Amendment, but I would want to do it through legal means. And that's going to be really hard to do until we come up to a point where we realize that. And again, to your point, we could outlaw every weapon ever made ever tomorrow, and it's not going to fix it.
Or
but it might fix some.
Program. Well, what about it? We institute a government program, or we pay $1 million for every weapon somebody turns in.
I could get behind that. Maybe $1 million. I don't know. We could do a little cheaper than that. I'll tell you about the AI though. And seriously, the ramifications of this are a little.
Think
spooky.
about that though. What if you did a buyback? Okay, so what if? I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but before I forget, what if you did like a purely statistics? Like you want to reduce the number of gun crimes, take the number of guns off the street. What if you put on restrictions for gun manufacturers to make them slow production, and then you put an incentive in place to get people to take guns off the street? If you could reduce the gun, I'm sure you could put together a percentage. Like if you reduce the number of guns in the U.S. circulating by 10%, it probably reduces crime by X.
Well, the other thing the economist in me likes is that you could do the equivalent of Uber surge pricing, right? Like, I don't know, what's a pump shotgun worth in Kansas?
Not a hell of a lot.
What what's a 380 pistol worth in the south side of Chicago?
Yeah. Yeah, right.
The pricing might not be based on the cost of the firearm, but the societal value of getting that firearm off the street. And you could,
Did you ever see the Chris Rock bit on gun control? And he's like, I'll tell you, we don't need more gun control. What we need is bullet control. If bullets if bullets were $5,000 a piece, I'd be like, I'm gonna cap your ass, but now I got to save up, and then I'm gonna cap your ass.
yeah. I mean, in some ways, that's exactly the kind of thinking that we need. That won't fix it for everybody but you know what? Seriously, like I was thinking, like, people that are serious shooters, they reload, right? They've got the powder in the machine in their basement and they're making their own ammunition. But probably the average person pulling something out of their trunk to commit a crime, you could throw a wrench into their plans if they're not able to buy ammunition. The beauty of some limitations on ammunition too. First of all, it doesn't have the constitutional issue. I mean, you can kind of say, well, like, you can keep and bear all the arms that you want, but you can't buy any bullets for it.
You can only sell shotgun shells.
Yeah.
Oh, that would change things.
Again, it's not 100% fixed because are there ways around that? Of course there are ways around it. Even outlawing the manufacture of guns. There's people, you can 3D print a gun. But it makes it harder. It makes the price, whether the actual price or just the burden of getting one price, go up. And I'm enough of an economist to say that if we can raise the price, we can drop the demand.
Yeah.
That's how that works. And would it fix it all? Absolutely not. But this idea, there's too many guns, we can't do anything, like, that's bullshit. Of course we can do things. We can't fix it all, but why don't we try a few things? Why don't we try a few creative solutions? And if my idea saved a half
I'm all
a percent
for it, and I'm 100% for it. Let me just say, my frustration with the left is nobody's throwing out creative solutions. It's just a soundbite. They're like, well, we need more gun control. Well, okay, what, how, where? Show me. I'm for it, but it's always a lack of detail. So you're not wrong. I don't disagree with you. The Republican that says, hey, we're not going to do anything because it's not going to fix everything. I'm with you. That's not a reason not to do something. I just wish we had politicians on the right or the left that came up with more creative solutions than just throwing out the soundbite of the day.
Yeah.
And but honestly, that's our whole podcast. That's our whole frustration with the political system as it is.
You're right. I was going to say it comes full circle because you got to ask yourself, I mean, we're not exactly global statesmen, but in a 45-minute phone call, we realized that, well, it's not going to fix everything, but maybe we ought to think about a couple of these things. The politicians don't want it. They don't want it to change.
Yeah.
They talk about it, but to your point, let's put bona fide solutions on the table.
I was listening to a podcast and they were talking about how, like, school shootings, I don't know if it was school shootings or violence of some kind, and they were talking about, like, they're good for fundraising. Like, that's how these politicians see the freaking world. Like,
yeah.
Oh no, this is good for fundraising for anti-gun or whatever the hell you're fundraising. Like, is that not just a completely blacked out way in the world?
Yeah, that encapsulates it all right there, right?
So I think, honestly, we've got our first Project 2030 tenant. We're going to pay a financially, we're going to pay a modulated financial price for guns to reduce the supply on the street, and then you got to back it up with an incentive to the gun manufacturers. Because honestly, if you paid money for the guns, if I'm a gun manufacturer, I'm going to build as many freaking guns as possible. So there's got to be a counterbalance with the gun manufacturers to incentivize them not to build more.
Well, you put the equivalent of a tariff on the sale of the gun up front, and that's how you fund your program. I mean, raising
And then
the
we
price.
say, hey, you can sell all the, tell Remington, you can sell all the guns you want to England, Denmark, and
Well, and you
all the
can sell
EU.
all the guns you want, but when I have to surge price, when I have to pay, when it's 10 grand a weapon or 20 grand a weapon in high crime areas, you want to sell a weapon in that area? Yeah, well, then you create arbitrage and people. I mean, we got to give full acknowledgement that there's a lot to work out with our plan. But you raise the price of guns?
Or you get a, kind of like the Israelis did with Hezbollah with the pagers. The pagers blew up. We need to infiltrate the supply chain of the gun industry somehow to where like infiltrate the lubricant industry somehow so that the lubricant will lock up all the guns so they won't work. I mean, there's an angle.
Like a 6 month, the gun oil has like a 6 month window, and then it turns into super glue and they become unusable.
Honestly, speaking for myself, I feel like we could walk through multiple topics like this where even as somebody who fashions themselves as a right, conservative, whatever moniker you want, I'd be willing to consider a lot of alternatives that might even conflict with core principles of my party platform if they were just creative. Like if somebody just put thought into them. That's the thing that pisses me off the most of politicians is they just serve up the same freaking swill and they expect us to lap it up like dogs.
No argument there. My brother-in-law, I won't name him for fear of, just try to be respectful for people, but he's said through the years many times that he's totally right. How many of these big societal problems, and maybe gun control is not the one I'd start with, but how many of these could you hand over to a team at McKinsey or Boston Consulting and say, come up with a market smart, these are your parameters. You got to live with a country that's got a Second Amendment. You've already got 10 guns for every human being already on the street, right? Like these are the table stakes. Come up with a way that minimizes the harm and bring the PowerPoint deck to Congress after you've done. It would be better than we've got.
Well, I've always thought like if you made people come in front of, Simon Cowell and Jennifer Lopez, like the American Idol's judges, or come in front of Shark Tank and pitch a solution. And if you can't pass it through them, then you're out. Like maybe we tell Congress that, like, you can't introduce a bill until it's been through Shark Tank.
We are locking the doors and nobody's getting out of here until we got a better idea.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for joining us on this episode of Bourbon and Rum Podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. Remember to subscribe on your favorite platform and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us keep the good spirits flowing.
And we invite you to join this conversation. Follow us on our Facebook page. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you want to hear.
And until next time, cheers.